Greetings and salutations, all you beautiful individuals. It is another epi of League Unlock. Eric and Mark here with you guys after a bit of a hiatus refresh during the peak of MSI. Yes, we missed, I think you could certify a couple of bangers, especially the last 48 hours on the Rift. And obviously, we have to begin with the continued saga. We've done videos about the G2 versus T1 rivalry, specifically at MSI, and oh man, the latest chapter is maybe the greatest because both Game 1 and Game 4 of this insane series are all-time games at the Midseason Invitational.
Well, I was gonna say the kind of ill-timed MSI vacation maybe was a full-blown cover type of situation, going over how every single matchup, no matter what the series was a 3-0 at the end of the day. What type of show do you want to do to cover that? Yes, thankfully in the last couple days, getting some bangers, some full-on real deal series to sink our teeth into for that. And yes, this MSI has delivered in those series.
And obviously feeling like a little bit of nostalgia, 2019 with the G2 upset against T1. T1 eliminated outside of top 4 for the first time at any international event. And I'm actually leaving this tournament like not feeling that bad about T1, number one, because I mean the BLG series they lose. BLG, it's contested, and Billy look insane, as we'll get to. And this performance from G2, I think most people are talking about, but everyone should be talking about this being the performance out of G2 more so than T1 underperforming, and especially you might never see a better top lane performance out of a Western player than what you got out of the top father himself in Brokenblade.
Oh man, that is an absolute career day for Brokenblade. Generational type of performance out of the top laner for G2. I'm so happy that we covered this rivalry and we talked about it before this MSI, and one of the big points that we talked about within that, there needs to be a pushback. You can't just have it be that one way, one team viewing you as the rival. It needs to be both sides of that coin, and you need to have pain, punishment on those sides. And G2 delivers some more pain, some more punishment for T1. Don't underestimate how big a deal this is for T1 to be eliminated at this point. Not only, obviously, as you've laid out, at this stage at MSI, to not make it to that top 4 within the event has never happened before. Losing to G2 for the first time since, again, going back to that 2019 series and that type of failure for them. And on top of it all, in front of the home fans with so much pressure, so much excitement and expectation on T1 getting through this lower bracket, getting themselves at worst a matchup against Hanwha Life or a rematch against BLG to set things right and get that opportunity in the top series. All of that not going to happen for T1 due to G2 and Brokenblade's unique champions coming through in the top side. And I think that is where I want to start talking about this one, because there's two sides to this. One is going to be, I think, flat out probably the worst, the ugliest performance that we have seen throughout the entirety of this series from Doran during his tenure on T1. And then all the positive things that Brokenblade does individually in this one. And it gets a little hard to kind of identify which, positive thing or which action in the game is in which side, which camp on both those things, because you did see a healthy dose of it all. But I think you got to be able to see both sides of this matchup and find that in this one when you're looking at that top side. This is Doran that was looking to prove himself after getting obviously kind of publicly humiliated and shamed by Bin in this tournament, and wanting that type of rebound. And again, in front of the home fans, home T1 fans, this was a big opportunity for him. And so to fall on your face in this form, in this fashion, really is a painful moment for him and T1.
I mean, the most meta champion Brokenblade plays in this series is Vayne. That's the most meta champion in that first game. I know Yasuo was there as a counter pick, and he was even fantastic, even though he had 8 deaths in that game lost that they had to T1. But as you got halfway through this series, it very much became Brokenblade versus Pays, because we have to highlight the heavy lifting this dude did from the get-go with the Ziggs game. The one death ends up being a pivotal one, but he was the most aggressive Ziggs play you've probably seen. And then, of course, the Xayah game, he pretty much hard carries at time with the help of, Curious Rakan. And then the pentakill on Caitlyn to look like he's going to steal this game. This guy was legit one-shotting Labrov on the Caitlyn. The fact that he lost on this performance of a game, again, is a testament to this 15-kill Kled out of Brokenblade.
Well, it's a testament to also how ill-equipped everybody, not just Doran, on T1 was to play into this Kled. I think there was multiple times where they must have felt like this is an Anivia-like champion, where that remounting of Skarl has to be on that passive cooldown timer like the egg. It's not, guys. He's gonna get back on it, and he did. Multiple fights in multiple instances, and turned it around to get back a trade kill, to turn the fight in favor of G2 when it never should have been. And it does throw away to the wayside and waste. What a wonderful performance from Pays. And I think overall, you look at this MSI for T1, the expectation, the bar is already set at great. So it is a tough task to, get up to that point in the first place. Pays exceeded it. He was phenomenal. He was everything and then some from what we have talked about, and his form was at this type of tier heading towards the event. I think everybody else at T1 you kind of find somewhere in the good tier, not great, which is, that below what is the expectation for T1 in this world championship type of roster. And I think Doran is the one that comes in the lowest of the grades for T1 when you're looking at this MSI as a whole.
And again, you heard Coach Tom talk afterwards. We knew Yasuo, but we were a bit surprised by the Kled. If only there were 8 different games this year, all wins that Brokenblade had played that pick that they could study heading into this. Crazy that they weren't anticipating that, but it ends up saving them in this 4th game. And listen, if they lose game 4, I think 99 times out of 100, T1 are winning that 5th game, because Skewmond looked tilted out of his mind in game 4, even though G2 came back to win.
Well, especially the kind of the fashion that even game 3 played itself out for, and in that one was one of those ones that you were looking at. And then again, yes, the way that game 4 goes, and just all those kills, you have to be thinking that is that way that series would be heading. Not the world that we're living in. We're in the world where G2 finds a way through, gets the miracle win against T1, and I even hesitate to call it a miracle win because of just how flat out earned this was throughout draft, throughout the individual performances of the players. Got to give this over to G2. And now they're setting ourselves up, and they did all the good trash talk to give us a wonderful layout of the stage for Lion versus G2 to set up who's going to play against Hanwha Life. Man, NA versus EU to decide who is on the podium for MSI feels pretty good.
We thought, G2 versus T1 obviously been the highlight of the series. And then we follow that up by getting I don't even want to say vintage, but a dominant Billy Gaming throwdown against HLE, who, at least throughout MSI and that matchup against T1 for the road to MSI, this team looked unbeatable. Clearly the favorites coming into this event, and BLG just come in, absolutely punched them in the mouth. We've been highlighting Zeka Yone, completely unbeatable, until you meet the Akali out of Night, who absolutely smashed and showed why he's the number 1 mid laner, not number 2 for Zeka. 17-1 and 27 scoreline for Knight in the 3 wins for BLG in this series.
Knight's gonna be looking at the LCK after he's dispatched Faker, dispatches Zeka here, and goes, this is what you guys are gonna bring to the international table against me this year, the way I'm playing? Have you seen me in the LPL? Knight delivers once again, and this is exactly the type of dominance that we see week in and week out in the LPL, and now we're seeing here on the international stage at MSI. He was phenomenal in this one. A steamroll by BLG, very much so, making this Hanwha Life team look a lot more like the Hanwha Life that we saw finish last in the LCK to start out the year, as opposed to the Hanwha Life that claimed first spot in the LCK in this second split. Very much a dominant performance from Knight leading the way through. I think that everyone else on BLG was still very strong. I think On has had his best international tournament in a long time. This is a BLG that is in full good, fine shape and form heading towards the finals.
And listen, these first 2 games, at least, they weren't close. Hama got a single turret across both of those games. We get top tier Mundo performance out of Zeus to steal a game. That Mundo was absolutely disgusting. And then a little bit more contested in that 4th game. But not only are we turning back the clock to 2019 because G2's beaten T1, but we're getting Viper on the awesome dudes in the bot lane. Looked quite comfortable on both the Cassiopeia and the more spicy Talia now to get thrown into the Mel, Syndra, Ziggs, the crazy AP carries we're seeing bot throughout this tournament.
And flat out, that is a dangerous thing for everybody else at this MSI. And if this is something that is going to continue throughout the summer split towards the World Championship, this is something you need to be aware of, because this is an angle, an X factor within the meta and establishing of it, and especially even more so actually now than in the past, where you now have the fearless draft and you are cycling through these champions more so. Having that in your roster, in your champion pool, is something that you can dial up for your team, different compositions and everything else. Viper is the one that presents that as an angle more competently than anybody else at this tournament, and I don't think it's even close when you're looking at the rest of the ADCs that we have here. You know, Berserker, Hansama, even Gumayushi. None of them are going to be as adaptable to that type of carry, that type of role in that bottom lane, the way that Viper has clearly shown himself to be, not only in the current form, but throughout the entirety of his career. So that is something that, yes, I am very much so worried about seeing with that, because again, you're already scared about BLG. Knight playing the way that he is, getting the jungle performances that you are being Ben. And now you've got that bottom lane with On playing the best that he's played in a long time, and extra options available for Viper. Really scary stuff from BLG.
Yeah, I mean, this really opens up another level for the bot lane, because we've already seen On plant Skarner, Anivia, all these crazy off-meta support picks, and now the flexibility to throw in even beyond the typical trio of AP carries in the bot lane makes, this bot lane another tier to match up against for an already lethal BLG. And time again, it's always, how is Jun playing? Because that is the bread and butter of BLG, either looking completely lost or dominating. And we talked about Kanavi being the best jungler in the world heading into this event, and Jun just kind of gapped him across this whole series.
I think it's partly the individual play was really at a high level from him, but really it's just the chemistry, it's the synergy, and it's the, the unspoken things that you don't need to actually have that communication for, just that predictability of your own teammates, knowing how they'll play, when they need you, what you need, all these things that again are amplified as that jungler position, and Jun was on top of it all in this one.
It feels like maybe the blessing in disguise, it was a positive thing. Losing to World Elite, having to do this whole lower bracket run for BLG to actually be a little bit tested in playoffs, and you're kind of reaping the rewards here. It just feels like still a full revenge tour for what happened to them in playoffs, because this is the best BLG has played all year probably, and they've won everything that they've been in.
Doesn't matter how talented, how skilled you are, sometimes you need that adversity, you need that challenge, you need that down moment to pull yourself back up to heights that you haven't reached yet. And I think that is exactly what we are seeing with this BLG team, and we've talked about it through various points of the year, and some of the troubles and some of the stories that we have had about BLG and where they have been and where they weren't up to the expectations, now exceeding them with the way that they are playing and what type of pace they are setting for the LPL.
And you can talk about even beyond that extra motivation. I mean, pick your poison, one of two. BLG, wanting to prove that the LPL is a legit reason or a legit region with Top Esports throwing a bit of a dud at this event. And then number two, it's in Korea, and the LPL and BLG especially seems to love playing that villain role of completely destroying any fun for the home crowd.
Yeah, it's always good to play that little bit of an antagonist run, get that little bit of a chip on your shoulder against the crowd, which, by the way, has been pretty receptive and pretty responsive to BLG, and I think a large part of that is due to some well-traveled fans from the LPL. Of course, not that much of a distance to travel compared to the other regions, but still want to give them their shout-outs to how supportive they have been and noticeable they have been on the broadcast, but very much so BLG is loving every second of this, and they are going to be sitting there smiling, waiting to see who is going to join them in the finals.
And somehow, some way, we're in a world where Lion Gaming, according to the final results of MSI, is better than T1 at this event. You're absolutely insane to obviously say that, as G2, you alluded to, rightfully talking a little bit of trash that Lion is lucky to be against them in this next matchup, and really, they're not wrong. With a 3-0 against Furia and now Team Secret Wales, the only reason we're seeing Lion there, they obviously got 3-0 slammed by BLG, so they haven't really faced stiff competition to be at this matchup against G2.
Which, unfortunately, I think Team Secret Wales, frankly, underperformed at this event. I think that we are going to see some lessons and some rebounding from them, obviously, during the LCP split, but even more so when it comes towards Worlds. So I will keep track of that one, put that one on the scoreboard to keep a look at later.
Feels even worse for Top Esports, by the way, that you lost to them, and then Lion swiftly 3-0 them. Oh, brother.
That wasn't a good look for the LPL, but it was something for Lion, and the LCS is in desperate need of anything to come through from Lion, and they are done a favor by the scheduling, because yes, if this matchup was going to be right after, hot on the heels of that G2 toppling T1 series, I wouldn't have given Lion even a sniff in this one to take a game. I think they've got an opportunity to take one, and if you can take one, you can maybe take two, and if you take two, got that opportunity to close the deal and make this the series that you win and will always remember as Lion Gaming. I think that is the key to me, having that extra day of preparation to look over what happened in that T1 series, the draft strategies, the play out from G2's side, being more aware of, hey, Brokenblade is going to play to his champion pool. He is not going to play to the meta slave or what is necessary against a T1. He's going to play what makes G2 their strongest version of G2, so you better be ready for that. I think the base level average performance out of the top side with Dokla is better than the worst performance that you are going to get out of Doran, which we did receive in that series, I think, against G2. So I'm banking on that. But on the side of G2 and where you can feel, again, that confident, puff out your chest a little bit, as you rightfully should, having taken down T1, the back-to-back-to-back world champions here at MSI, you can really feel better about your bottom lane and looking at Hansama and what you're going to be getting there. Because I think when you look at that matchup against Pays was doing some work and creating big advantages for himself. I don't think Berserker is going to be at that Pays type of level, so you're going to have more room in that bottom lane to have Hansama be more of a factor earlier within these games at any point, and I think that that is going to be absolutely a factor that you will like in your corner if you are G2.
Yeah, and just the pure laning pressure that Berserker and Isles are going to put out is not going to be close to what Pays and Kyria were doing throughout that series, so some breathing room for Hansama and LeBron in that bot side. I will give a positive angle for Lion, because Saint, well, number one, he steals game one for them against Team Secret Wales with that Baron steal. He has an impeccable Ahri performance. He is back to that form early on for Lion, where we were like, this guy is clearly the best mid laner in the LCS. But again, you're going up against Caps. And even though Caps didn't have an absolute world beater collapse performance against T1, he was still Caps at the bare minimum, and it's hard to give any NA player an edge over him.
He was still there in all the key crucial moments of that series. He was still there behind all of the strategy, the planning that goes through with all these things that comes through within those G2 drafts and games and executions. That's going to be a big factor, but Saint has leveled up at this event, and I think that you can take some of that confidence if you're a Lion. And the other factor, again, should always have confidence if you've got Inspired as your jungler stepping to the plate for you if you are a Lion. Now it is, again, going to be quite a matchup with Skewmond on the other side, and I think that to me, on top of all the other storylines that you can talk about, which are very exciting and have their own validity to them, That's the one I'm actually the most excited about, is looking into that jungle matchup and seeing who is going to be more of a deciding factor for their squad, for their team, because both of them have been absolutely crucial to either of their team's success, getting the game plan rolling in the way that they want to. That's going to be a big factor that I'm looking at.
Yeah, and it's probably actually the most important matchup because, again, alluded to Skewmon looking tilted even in Game 3 of the G2 T1 series. So I think he's going to be looking to reprove. His team bailed him out a little bit. And listen, this guy has been like the best Western player throughout the majority of 2026 so far. So a rebound for him. And obviously both of these junglers can snowball a game and series very quickly if they're finding their rhythm and taking over the early game. So probably, yeah, whoever the better jungler is going to be winning this series. And I imagine with Brokenblade's picks and Dokla being a weak side king, there might be a lot of action on that top lane throughout this series with the junglers.
I think that's a pretty safe bet to say there's going to be some action there. This series is going to be really fun either way it goes, whether it is that dominant fashion from G2 and really establishing themselves within that top order of the international table and denying Lion and the LCS a seat at that table, or it's going to be a bit of a, letdown from the performance against T1, and it's going to be that surprising upstart from Lion Gaming, earning themselves a spot on that podium, a date with one of the giants remaining at this event, because I think, frankly, even G2, where you might be able to talk yourself into having still some type of aspirations to ultimately be the total champion of this event, you're still looking at progress, still looking at what you can gain from this one towards your summer split, towards a world championship type of run, and you gain from getting a match against a Hanwha Life, a gain from getting an exposure against a BLG in these type of situations with this much on the line. That's what's at stake here for both of these squads.
People saying they're getting a whiff of NRG versus G2 at Worlds. Totally different storylines. That was a G2 losing streak, 2 series in a row coming into that one. This is a G2 riding all the momentum of upsetting T1 and feel like there's no way they don't 3-0 Lion. But either way, NA can take pride. We still got the TLKC head-to-head, regardless of how this tournament ends up playing out. But that is it today for League Unlock. Eric and Mark here with you, Stunners. Thanks for hanging out. We'll catch you on that flippity flip.